It's Wednesday night after a long day, and the last thing you want to do is cook dinner from scratch. But you still want a satisfying, tasty meal without the guilt? Enter your freezer's sidekick, Cauliflower. From thin and crispy cauliflower crust pizzas to all-natural white meat chicken tenders and more, Cauliflower is gluten-free always, satisfies every craving, and is ready in minutes. Cauliflower is available in freezer aisles nationwide. Visit eatcauliflower.com/where-to-buy to find a store near you.
You're listening to Missing Persons, brought to you by AbJack Entertainment. Be sure to check out some of the other great true crime podcasts from this network, including Scene of the Crime, The Murder in My Family, and 3 Men and a Mystery. All of these podcasts are available for you to binge on right now, wherever you listen to podcasts.
The views and opinions expressed by guests on this podcast do not necessarily represent those of the podcast, its creators, or sponsors. If you would like to discuss a missing persons case on this podcast, please be sure to visit missingpersonspodcast.net. This episode may contain unsettling or disturbing subject matter. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to Missing Persons, a podcast dedicated to spreading the word about people who have vanished under mysterious or unexplained circumstances and the family members who are looking for answers. I'm Jess Betancourt.
And I'm Mike Morford. Together we created this podcast to help give a voice to people who continue to look for their missing loved ones. In some cases, even after decades have gone by. In each episode, you'll hear from Jess giving listeners the backstory and the basic facts of the disappearance.
Then Mike will speak with someone who's intimately connected to the missing person, and his guest will share their story with us.
Please stay tuned at the conclusion of this episode to hear about our Patreon program and our commitment to help find people who have gone missing. We'll also share with you where you can find more information and how you can join our team and help our efforts. You'll get recommendations for other podcasts we think you'll enjoy, and more.
So sit back and enjoy this episode, and who knows, maybe you can help us find someone who's missing. Episode 17, Susan Osborne and Evan Chartrand. Susan Osborne was born on August 22, 1974, in Michigan. She had a loving family, including 2 brothers and her parents, although tragically, Susan's father died about 4 months before she disappeared. Susan, a nurse, married a man named Eric Chartrand, and they had a son named Evan. When Evan was about 4 years old, the family of 3 moved from Michigan to Alabama when Eric was transferred by his job. After a time, Susan and Eric divorced, and Susan had an extended relationship with an Alabama man named Jonathan Royal. The 2 never married, but had a daughter, whom we are not going to name, but we will call by her first initial, H. Susan's family says that in general, she made bad choices when it came to men. When her relationship with Jonathan fell apart, and Susan was facing some very hard times with her water and power shut off, she took the kids and went back to Michigan to stay with her family and get back on her feet. As a result of this, the fathers of both of her children filed custody complaints. Authorities removed the children from Susan and placed them in the custody of their respective fathers back in Alabama. Susan was forced to return to that state and fight to regain custody of her children. She was successful when it came to Evan, but she was relegated to being the non-custodial parent for H, who lived most of the time with her father Jonathan. Evan, who was 14 in early 2017, had some medical issues and a severe stutter. But he had a good group of friends, and his teachers say he was always smiling and happy. His half-sister, H, was age 10. The family had 2 small dogs they adored, Sugar and Schnook. Susan was single for several years before she met Jerry Osborne sometime in 2013. Evan was a fishing fanatic, and Susan and Evan often fished together at a park along the Coosa River. It was here that she met Jerry. Jerry was an Air Force vet who had served in Iraq and worked at Maxwell Air Force Base near where Susan lived in Holtville, Alabama. Jerry had suffered a traumatic brain injury in Iraq and received a medical discharge from the Air Force because of this. Many of his fellow Corps members were also injured in the incident that had caused his injuries, and Jerry was on medication to treat the PTSD he suffered from as a result of this trauma. When Susan met Jerry, she immediately called her friend Holly Morris and said she had met a wonderful, normal, nice guy. When Holly met him, she agreed, and Jerry and Susan were quickly an item. They married about a year after meeting on January 25, 2014. Evan, too, liked Jerry, called him Dad, and the two appeared to have a good relationship. Holly and Susan had become immediate friends when Susan moved in across the street from her several years earlier, as her relationship with Jonathan, H's father, was disintegrating. Holly and Susan texted or spoke nearly every day. Holly says that Susan seemed happy with Jerry for the first couple of years of their nearly 4-year marriage, but then some things became apparent to her that were of concern. One day, in spring of 2017, Susan sent Holly an email. The subject line was, "Don't mention this in text." Susan told Holly on the email that Jerry read her texts and checked her phone, so she could correspond about confidential matters only via email, which he did not have access to. And she had something she needed to tell Holly. Jerry, Susan said, was cheating on her with men. Jerry was a gay male escort. It all started when Susan called Jerry at work on the base one day. He had been working a lot of hours, including overtime, which she had thought was strange because, as a vet with a pension, he did not need the extra money. She was told that no, Jerry was not actually at work, and he didn't answer his cell phone. And this occurred a few more times. At one point, he disappeared for several days. Susan began to be suspicious and started digging. This was about a year before she disappeared. Susan uncovered lots of emails between Jerry and men he had met pursuant to a post he made on boyscourt.com using the name Jay. She found a photo of him in a suggestive sexual pose wearing thong-style briefs. The photo was from the back, but she could identify his distinctive tattoos. His cell phone number matched the one on the listing. The emails and post made it clear that Jerry was working as a paid escort for gay male Johns, and had been for years. Susan told Holly that over the past year, she had gathered a lot of information about Jerry's secret life, and she had not told Jerry that she knew any of this. However, she said she had stopped sleeping in the same bed as Jerry, and in response, he had become even more controlling and suspicious. She was only permitted to speak with her friends on speakerphone, so he could hear the conversations. Jerry insisted on accompanying her everywhere, demanding that he drive her places, even though she had a car. Susan told Holly she planned to escape, but she needed to line up a job, a place to stay, and insurance for the kids before she could leave. And she had to be careful not to tip Jerry off. But later, on May 16th, Susan told Holly that she and Jerry had worked things out, and she still loved him. In hindsight, Holly is not sure if Jerry had snowed Susan or had frightened her into staying. Susan's mom, Linda Anklam, came to visit in early May of 2017. She did not notice anything unusual. But Susan's family later said that Jerry had slowly but surely cut Susan off from much of her family, not permitting many visits or phone calls. Linda only met Jerry a total of 4 times. One of Susan's brothers only met him once, when he came up to Michigan with Susan to say goodbye to her father on his deathbed. Susan's family noted that Jerry was very overbearing, always following Susan around, never leaving her alone, and controlling her. They were aware that he permitted Susan to speak with them on the phone only if the calls were on speakerphone, so he could hear them. Sadly for best friends Holly and Susan, Holly's fiancé was transferred away from Alabama to a job in Key West. The couple moved on May 16, 2017. After they moved, Susan offered to pick up Holly's mail and send it to her, until the mail forwarding Holly had requested commenced. She did pick up the mail for a few days and remained in daily communication with Holly. Susan was excited to be the maid of honor at Holly's wedding. They continued to text back and forth through May 29th. But then, on May 30th, Holly texted good morning to Susan, and there was no response. Of course, Holly assumed that Susan was just busy. But over the next few days, she continued to receive radio silence from Susan. Holly even texted Evan to no avail. She called both of them, but they had no voicemails set up, and eventually, the phones were disconnected. Holly began to be very concerned. Where on earth was Susan? It was totally unlike her to be so out of touch. Holly attempted to recall Susan's mom Linda's last name, but could not. She tried to contact Susan's brother via Facebook, but his account was private. And she had no contact information for Jerry. Holly began to think back to the past year and all the signs that things were not right between Susan and Jerry. Susan had started canceling their plans without being able to give much of a reason. Jerry had begun to control every aspect of her life, insisting on driving her places, making her quit her job, listening to her calls. Holly had been concerned about Susan's relationship with Jerry before, but now she was downright alarmed. Meanwhile, Susan's family was also starting to find it odd that she was unreachable. Linda became very concerned when she attended her granddaughter's graduation in Michigan at the end of May and sent Susan pictures and texts of the event and got no response. She even sent Susan a text jokingly asking if she needed to come and track her down. Finally, she sent Susan a letter, and it was returned to her marked not deliverable. Linda talked to her son, Susan's brother, about it. He made contact with Holly, and the two put two and two together. Susan was missing, and had been since Memorial Day weekend. It was now July 29th. They called the Elmore County Sheriff's Office for a welfare check and filed a missing persons report. When deputies arrived at the home Jerry and Susan and Evan had shared in a subdivision on Waterview Lane, they noted that Susan's car was in the driveway. Jerry answered the door, and it was apparent that he was cleaning. There were cleaning products in sight and incense burning. The house was empty of furniture, except for a new couch, TV, recliner, and video game system. Jerry told the deputies that his wife Susan had left him on Memorial Day. He said she told him she and Evan were leaving, and he watched on one of the many video surveillance cameras around the house as she got into a pickup truck with a man whom he described as 6 feet tall. It's not clear how he would know the man's height, as the man never got out of the truck, according to Jerry. But he also said the man had a beard and wore glasses and a hat. Jerry was under the impression that they were headed to Birmingham. He said that later, when he was out, Susan returned to the house and cleared out all her stuff, as well as a lot of the furniture. But he could not produce for the deputies this surveillance footage of Susan's departure. Jerry told them he had replaced the entire video recording system on June 1st. Jerry also told deputies that he knew Evan was fine because he had kept an appointment for oral surgery that was scheduled for the 31st. He knew this, he said, because he received a bill for it. Deputies were suspicious. Neighbors told them that Jerry had burned quite a few large items in the backyard. Even though temperatures were in the 90s, he had more than one large fire going for days after the disappearances that generated so much smoke that the neighbors were unable to go outside for several days. They complained of the smell of burning plastic and the acrid smoke. Another thing raised red flags. Susan and her children's beloved dogs had been dropped off at an animal shelter on June 12th. It later turned out that Jerry's dad was the one who dropped the animals at the shelter. And Holly and Susan's family said that she never, ever would have left without her daughter, H. Authorities obtained a search warrant and returned to the home the next day. They found out that even though the house was fairly new, Jerry had recently undertaken a renovation of sorts. Jerry's father told investigators that these renovations had started right around May 30th. He had ripped out all of the hardwood floors in the downstairs of the home and had the floors carpeted. The floors had been wood when Susan's mom Linda had visited 2 weeks before Memorial Day. Jerry had also painted the walls of the house. When detectives asked why he had painted a relatively new house, he said it was because before Susan left, she had spray painted the walls of the house with vulgar graffiti. No one was buying this explanation, and Jerry did not have any photos of the supposed vandalism wreaked on the house by Susan. And when deputies used luminol on the house, the downstairs lit up with 20 different bloodstains, lots and lots of blood in the kitchen, laundry room, and bathroom. It was on the walls and even on the ceiling fan. Blood was also found on some items that Jerry discarded in a dumpster on the Air Force Base. The blood was tested, and while it was determined to be human, it had been too degraded by cleaning products and paint to yield a DNA sample, so it could not be connected to Susan or Evan. Further, it was deemed suspicious that Jerry had burned so many items from the home. It was evident that he had burned furniture and Evan's mattress. Investigators determined that no one had seen or heard from Susan and Evan since May 29th. The oral surgery bill that Jerry said he had received for Evan was actually a bill for a nominal amount, a missed appointment fee. Further, Susan had not accessed her bank accounts or credit cards at all, or used her phone or social media. She had not collected her inheritance from her father, that Jerry forbade her from taking, saying he could take care of his own family. Evan had never been unenrolled from Holtville High School, where he was supposed to start his sophomore year in the fall of 2017. In short, Susan and Evan seemed to have vanished off the face of the earth. The sheriff's department brought in 2 cadaver dogs to check out the backyard of Jerry's home. The 2 dogs, independently from each other, hit on a spot near a 55-gallon drum in the yard where Jerry burned trash. But there were no bodies to be found. Deputies noted, however, that sometime after Susan disappeared, Jerry gave away her boat. Their home is very near multiple bodies of water, including Lake Jordan and the Coosa River. They tracked down the boat, and it contained no forensic evidence. In the course of their search of the home, the sheriff's department found some activity on Jerry's computer that they describe as suspicious and inexplicable. And some more disturbing information came to light. Holly has said that Jerry had lots of guns in the house. She personally saw them, including an AR-15 and other serious weapons. Elmore County Sheriff's deputies told Jerry's neighbors in a meeting after Susan and Evan's disappearance that someone had reported hearing gunfire on the night of Memorial Day. The homes in Jerry's neighborhood were only about 50 feet apart, so it is feasible that gunshots would be heard by someone. Also, it was determined that as part of his Air Force security position, Jerry had received training in law enforcement procedures and forensics. He would know how to hide evidence and possibly dispose of bodies. Jerry filed for divorce on July 5th, a few weeks after Susan was last seen. His attorney served Susan via publication. They cited no contact with Susan since Memorial Day weekend and asked for a default judgment. The judge granted Jerry's petition in August of 2017. Jerry has never agreed to talk to any members of Susan's family, and he has referred all inquiries from both law enforcement and Susan's family to his attorney. Susan and Evan have not been seen or heard from since May 29, 2017. They remain missing persons. All the circumstantial evidence in this case points to one person who may have had a hand in their disappearance. Elmore County Sheriff Bill Franklin told the Wetumpka Herald of Jerry Osborne, quote, "He's definitely a person of interest and probably our only person of interest." When he went missing, Evan Chartrand was 14 years old. He was 5'7" and 160 pounds, with brown hair and blue eyes. When she vanished, Susan Osborne was 5'3", 120 pounds, with brown hair and blue eyes. If you know anything about the disappearance of Evan or Susan, please call the Elmore County Sheriff's Department at 334-567-5546. Mike Morford sat down to talk with Missy Canfield, Susan's sister-in-law. That conversation is coming up after a word from our sponsors.
It's Wednesday night after a long day, and the last thing you want to do is cook dinner from scratch. But you still want a satisfying, tasty meal without the guilt? Enter your freezer's sidekick, Cauliflower. From thin and crispy cauliflower crust pizzas to all-natural white meat chicken tenders and crowd-pleasing snacks, Cauliflower satisfies every craving. Cauliflower's products are your favorite comfort foods, but made better for you and gluten-free always. The best part? You don't have to sacrifice taste or time, so you can honor your cravings without compromising. Craving pizza? You can enjoy Cauliflower's delicious margarita pizza for only 370 calories for half the pizza. Looking for easy snacks that kids and adults alike will love? Cauliflower's baked, never-fried pizza snacks are nostalgia reimagined and ready in 5 minutes. Cauliflower's products are available in freezer aisles nationwide. Visit eatcauliflower.com/where-to-buy to find a store near you.
Let's be honest. Most of us have a love-hate relationship with wired bras. We love the lift, but hate the digging. We love the support, but hate feeling trapped. Well, Knix just changed everything with FreeFlex, a wired bra actually designed to work with your body, not against it. FreeFlex features a revolutionary flexible wire that moves when you move, bends when you bend, and keeps everything exactly where you want it. No poking, no stabbing, no constant readjusting. Just freedom to move. It also has a demi-cup shape for a natural lift with a lower neckline that flatters in everything from V-necks to dresses. And because it's from Knix, it's available in sizes for every body. Experience the first wired bra you'll actually want to wear all day. Visit Knix.com for 15% off your order with FreeFlex15. That's KNIX.com, code FreeFlex15 for 15% off. Knix.com.
Missy, thanks for coming on Missing Persons to discuss your sister-in-law Susan and your nephew Evan's case with us.
No problem.
This is a very tragic case and needs some attention to hopefully get it solved. Just to verify, you're married to Susan's brother, is that correct?
Yes, I'm married to her big brother.
Okay. What kind of ordeal has this been for your family to try and wade through what's going on here?
It's been a nightmare. It's been like a movie you watch on TV that shouldn't happen in real life, and it doesn't really happen to, people and then we're living it. It's done a number on all of us.
There's definitely some different things that we'll get into, some twists and turns and stuff like that I think you described it well. It sounds like something out of a movie plot, but unfortunately for you, this is real. If you can, to start out, can you tell us a little bit about Susan and Evan, what they're like?
They were great. Susan we always called her Susie. So it sounds funny to say Susan to me because we always just do Susie. She's a great mom. Her kids were her world. Both Evan and her daughter both were her world. She loved them. She was a jokester, silly, life of everything. Always her and my husband used to just, brother, sister, banter back and forth, joke constantly, type thing, but just as sweet as could be, and a hard worker and stuff, and always, just a sweetheart. And Evan, he just always had a smile on his face. Ever since he was a little bitty, smile on his face, lighted up the world. He stuttered, but he didn't let that hold him back. Both of them loved fishing. They were obsessed with fishing. They fished every moment they could get. So the two of them were constantly together. They were like two peas in a pod, always doing everything they could together.
And I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. Oh.
What I was going to ask is, how many kids total did she have?
She has one son and one daughter.
Okay. Now, in regards to Evan being missing, her daughter is okay, correct?
Yes. Evan is her son from her first marriage, and so she had him with that husband. She's from Michigan, born and raised up here. Evan was like 4 or 5, I think, when they moved to Alabama with her husband for a job. They later divorced, so she had to stay down there because of split custody thing. She later met another gentleman, was with him for a while, and had her daughter. And with him, then she split from him. She never married him, and before she met Jerry, so she had no children with Jerry. And luckily, when this happened, her daughter was with her biological father that weekend.
Oh, that's what I was going to ask. Okay, so because if she was there, there might be 3 people missing.
Yeah, we're lucky that she wasn't there because she would probably be gone too. And she had full sole custody of Evan. His dad wasn't in the picture by the time this happened. So he was there because he was always with her. He didn't have any place to go. So I really think he was just a witness that he used to cover his tracks.
And it sounds like maybe, and again, we're going to get into this a little bit more, but it sounds like you're saying that maybe he was in the wrong place at the wrong time and maybe saw something, and because of that, some harm fell to him.
Yeah, or there was a fight and anger, and he knew he couldn't get away with it with just her because of course he would be a witness to it. He would know. There was nothing he could do, with their daughter, and all of a sudden he could say she's gone or whatever he wanted to say. She wasn't there, then it would cover up, but there was no place that Evan was always around. So I think he was just, a casualty of whatever happened. I mean, there's a couple different scenarios you go through your head, but Evan and his mom, like I said, were super close, and I prefer to think to myself that Evan was protecting his mom and tried to protect her, and he was involved because of that and stuff, rather than him going after Evan or something, and Susie being the one that fall to that. So,
yeah. How long was Susan married to Jerry?
I want to say 3 to 4 years. She didn't tell us she married him, which was really strange. She didn't even tell her best friend that she married him. Her best friend found out because the caller ID changed on her phone, and my mother-in-law found it by Googling her name one day, just messing around, and Googled all of her kids' names and found a marriage license in the thing. And so it was about 3 to 4 years, but I don't have an exact date because it was hid from us from just a little while.
Did she ever explain why she chose to keep that a secret?
Not really. I don't. She said that she told her best friend they just wanted a private ceremony, just the two of them by themselves. And so she just did it and hadn't told her yet, and which didn't really make sense. And then on my mother-in-law, she just didn't really ever explain why, And then the first time she went to see her after they got married, she wouldn't let him come to their house either. So there was something weird about him from the beginning.
And that's a good segue into my next question, because I was going to ask you, what were your thoughts about him? What did your family think of him once you did get to meet him?
My mother-in-law met him 3 or 4 times. The first time she wasn't allowed to the house. They met somewhere out in public. She met him a couple times after that and stuff. Now, when she was there Mother's Day, she said things seemed okay between them and fine. That was 2 weeks before this. And she said, but he come in the one day and she seen a bunch of medicine bottles, and she asked him about those, and he lifted up his hands and just started shaking them and says, if I don't take it, I'm just like this, and started shaking his hands. So what she thought was weird, but still she didn't put too much onto it because he seemed nice. We only met him once. My father-in-law passed away. Susan's dad passed away in January of 2015, and she came up to the hospital and to see him before he passed, and he was right beside her, right on top of her. Everywhere she went in to see him, he was right there and everything. And I remember my husband's aunt making the remark, what does he have to be in there for? He doesn't know him. He's never even met him till now. And I looked at her and I said, but if it was your dad, you'd want your husband there with you to support you, right? And she goes, yeah, I guess, or so. But we never got one chance to speak to Susie without him right there. And knowing what we knew later, it wasn't nice, supportive husband. It was controlling husband that didn't want her to have a chance to be alone with anybody, that she could say anything was going on.
Wow. And did you have the relationship to where she might talk about, if he wasn't right there, that she might talk about what was going on or anything that was going on in the marriage?
No, she kept a lot to herself. She didn't really tell you how bad. She did the same with her first marriage. She really wouldn't tell you how bad things were that much. But Jerry proceeded to pull her away from all of us and just gradually pull her away. He began to listen to every one of her phone calls. So he always had to be on speaker and listen to him. So after her dad died, he sort of pulled her away from us completely, other than her mom. But Susie knew, and I know she knows, that if she made one phone call to her brother, we would have been in Alabama as fast as we could have got there, and we would have helped her with anything she needed. We had done it in the past before that, and she knew, and I think she probably didn't want to tell us how bad it was, because she felt stupid for probably putting herself in the situation, or felt bad about herself for putting in the situation. And she also knew that that me and my husband would do anything to help her, and she didn't want to ask us of that, I don't think. Because I know she knows her brother had been there as fast as he could get there.
And how and when did you find out that Susie and Evan were in fact missing?
My mother-in-law goes back and forth from Michigan and Texas, and she was up here. My stepfather-in-law had passed away in February prior to this. So my mother-in-law actually lost her husband, her daughter, and her grandson in 4 months' time. But she was up here taking care of stuff for their summer place that they stay up here. And we had all FaceTime together just like the day or so before Mother's Day when she had left to go down to Alabama. We had FaceTimed and talked to Evan and his sister and to Susie and stuff. And then when she was in Alabama visiting them, she had called us and talked to us. Linda had called us, Susan's mother, but we hadn't talked to Susie when she was down there, but she was talking to them in the background, type thing. And then our daughter graduated high school like the next week or so. So Linda had went back to Texas and then flew up here for the graduation. So while she's here, she's sending Susie pictures of all of us at the graduation and everything. But she never told us that Susie didn't answer the messages. She kept it quiet. And so then we had an open house. We had different stuff. We were really busy, and we were planning a trip to Texas to take my mother-in-law's golf cart down to her place down there for her. My mother-in-law didn't say anything to us and stuff, and it was like hectic during that time. And she kept her mouth shut about everything going on that she hadn't heard. She had tried to call her. She didn't get an answer. She started trying to call Evans, and all of a sudden all the phones were disconnected. And then she had mailed her a letter, and it had gotten returned. Well, me and my husband and my youngest daughter were on our way to Texas. She waited till we pulled in. And the second we pulled in, she goes, I have to tell you that I reported her missing that day or the day before. She had reported her missing, and she goes, I haven't been able to talk to her. And I know my husband's like, why didn't you tell us? And she goes, because you would have been in Alabama, and I didn't want you to cause any problems. I wanted to know. So that's when we found out, when we pulled in there. And we stayed there a couple of days waiting for the news of what was going on while they went out to the house and what was going on. And then when we left there, we went through Alabama and showed up at the sheriff's department and sat and talked with the sheriff and to find out what they had found out and what was going on. And my husband gave DNA samples and stuff like that, or anything else we could do.
And how long had she been trying to contact her without getting a response? How much time had passed that she was actually missing, possibly?
It was almost 2 months. It was almost 2 months. My mother-in-law knows that Susie's private, and Susie doesn't like to really tell you stuff that's going on. She had just been there. Everything had seemed fine. She knew also that she was, thinking something was going on with the phones. Susie's best friend had moved to Florida 2 weeks prior to this also. Well, nobody knew. We didn't talk to her best friend, so we didn't know that the best friend wasn't able to get a hold of her. Nobody put two and two to realize nobody was able to contact her. And she knew she had dropped her phone and was having problems with her phone. So she sort of thought it was a phone problem. My mother-in-law sort of thought it was, and then thinking there was something maybe going on, but she was scared that Susie would be mad at her if she sent the police to her door to check on her. And so after she finally, when she got the letter back undelivered, that's when she freaked out and said she had to. And she had made the phone call to the wrong police department at first, and then found out she had to call a different police department because it wasn't the Wetumpka Police Department. It had to be the Elmore County Sheriff's Department.
And once you finally did establish contact with the right police department, did they take it serious and start looking into it right away?
Yeah, I think they had to wait 24 hours after she called or something before they could like there's a stipulation on just a few minutes or something just to make sure, I think. But they were out there within a day or so. They went to the house, did a wellness check, found her car there at the house, found her husband cleaning the house, and checked on them. And then got a search warrant, and they were right back out there within a day or so.
All right, and then we'll talk a little bit about what they find and what they don't find, but this is where the story really starts to take a strange turn. I guess we have to point out there's a working theory that put forward that Jerry is leading a double life as a gay escort. Is that correct?
Yes. Susie did research and found online an ad on Boy Escort for him that he had prior to their marriage. And she had found the ad of him. She could tell it was him. It was a picture of him from the back with a Christmas bow on his butt. And she could tell it's him from the tattoos. And it was the phone number that he had when she met him. And she had found that, and she'd found other ads and stuff. And at that time, he was controlling her phone calls, and he had to listen into the phone calls and controlling. Had emailed these to her best friend, telling her best friend, don't mention these, don't say anything, and just send it to her. So luckily the best friend had kept all of that stuff that she had sent with the ads and everything she had found. The ads were prior to the marriage, but during the marriage at that time, he was starting to act suspicious and different things. Ordering burner phones and stuff like that, and he had disappeared for a little while, and he was just starting to act suspicious again. And then when she found that, she was worried that he was back into whatever that was, but she was also shocked to find out he had done that before she married him.
So him acting weird is what made her start looking into his secret side and where she found this stuff.
I'm assuming so, that she was probably suspicious on what was going on. I know that he disappeared right like the fall prior to this, or within a year before that. He had just up and disappeared. She couldn't find him. He called her and said somebody was chasing him down the road, and that he was scared, and then he disconnected the phone and wouldn't call her or wouldn't talk to her at all. And so she had called the police department to report him missing a year before that. And then she found out, then he called the police department and says, "Oh, I'm just in Montgomery for the weekend, spending the weekend in Montgomery. I needed a break."
All kinds of strange behavior.
Yeah. So I think that some of that stuff was what was setting her off to start searching him and finding out that there's something wasn't right.
Now, Susie and Evan are officially missing, but your family fears that they were harmed, that they may have been killed by Jerry. Is that correct?
Yes.
And we have to point out that Jerry hasn't been charged with anything to this point. Is that correct?
Yes, he has not been charged. He is a person of interest, but he has not officially been charged.
Now, there are a lot of strange things that seem to point in his direction. What were some of the things that police uncovered about or around the house and his stuff that seemed to point towards him harming them?
Well, when they got there, he was cleaning the house when they showed up. When they showed up again with a search warrant, he was cleaning again. The house reeked of bleach and cleaners. When they went in and did the search, they discovered the house was only 5 years old. And when they went in, they discovered he had ripped up all the hardwood floors, and he had gotten rid of all the hardwood floors, replaced it with carpet. He had repainted the entire house, and it was pretty much empty. There was nothing in it. There was no dishes or nothing. There was no beds. Everything was gone other than a brand new entertainment center and a brand new couch and TV. He had completely renovated the house, completely did that. He had a very elaborate security system that was there in place on Mother's Day when Linda was there. That was gone and a new one was in its place. So he had purchased a new security system the day after they went missing on the 30th. He had completely started remodeling the house and gutted it and tore everything out. And they found out from all the neighbors he had been burning constantly. And when they searched the burn piles, they found mattress, the wires from like inside of a mattress. And then he admitted that he had burned Evan's bed and he had burned the dressers. And even though he had said she had left with another man and she had came back and wiped him out and took everything, he admitted he had burned everything. So he burned everything in the house completely.
Just suspicious all the way around between all the burning and the cleaning and emptying of everything.
Yeah, and then the story of that she was supposed to have left with another man, and he watched it on the cameras that's now missing. But then the story changed as to what the guy looked like. At first, it was a totally different one. The second one, he tried to describe my husband.
Oh.
Wow.
So did your family confront him at all and say, hey, what happened? Tell us the truth. I know something's wrong. What interactions happened between you?
We've had none. We've not been able to talk to him at all. As soon as the police brought him in to question him, he went and hid behind the lawyer. He won't respond. My mother-in-law's tried texting him, and she was told to leave him alone and go through the lawyer. So he won't speak to any of us. She drove by one day the house. You know, when you're in the town and stuff, you drive by the house because you just want to look. And she drove by, and he was standing in the yard, and he started to walk out to see if she wanted anything because she just stopped. As soon as he saw it was her, he turned around and ran back in the house when he realized it was her. So he won't talk to any of us. He won't. He's hiding behind the lawyer.
At what point did you believe that Susie and Evan had been perhaps killed by him and he was trying to hide this? Or did you believe that like immediately as soon as they were missing? Or did something happen to where you eventually felt that they had met with foul play?
Well, when we first heard, we thought maybe she, was getting out of a bad situation or something, or this or that. We hoped that that's all it was. That was she just ran from him type thing. And we had hope. But I remember because we were in Texas at my mother-in-law's at the time, and my mother-in-law's like, how could she do this to you? How could she do this to us, or type thing, wanting to think she took off because you don't want to think the worst and stuff. And I remember like when we'd go to bed, I sat there talking to my husband and saying, something's wrong, majorly wrong, and this is not good. And he goes, I know it's not good. Cause at that point, my mother-in-law started showing us pictures she had taken at the thing down there. And she showed my husband a picture of Susie, and the look on Susie's face, my husband looked at her and he says, Mom, how do you not see that on her face? She's screaming for help. I've seen that face 100 times, Mom. She's secretly screaming for help. How did you not notice that? And she goes, I didn't when I'm standing there because things seemed okay. Not until retrospect later did she look back to see the fear in her eyes and stuff. And when we saw that picture, me and my husband both said something is wrong. And when we went to Alabama, we knew something was wrong, but we didn't see any of the evidence or anything at that point. So we still had hope, but we also knew she would never leave her daughter. Never. So the second that her daughter wasn't with her, that's when we knew. We knew it was something horrible, because there's no way she would have left her. But then a few months later, I think the detective sat us down when we were back in town, like in November or something of that year, and sat us down, and he actually showed us some of the evidence, and he showed us the luminol. And at that point, we knew they were gone, and whatever it was gruesome.
I'm no tech genius, but I knew if I wanted my business to crush it, I needed a website now. Thankfully, Bluehost made it easy. I customized, optimized, and monetized everything exactly how I wanted with AI. In minutes, my site was up. I couldn't believe it. The search engine tools even helped me get more site visitors. Whatever your passion project is, you can set it up with Bluehost. With their 30-day money-back guarantee, what do you got to lose? head to Bluehost.com. That's BLUEHOST.com to start now.
It's Wednesday night after a long day, and the last thing you want to do is cook dinner from scratch. But you still want a satisfying, tasty meal without the guilt? Enter your freezer's sidekick, Cauliflower. From thin and crispy cauliflower crust pizzas to all-natural white meat chicken tenders and crowd-pleasing snacks, Cauliflower satisfies every craving. Cauliflower's products are your favorite comfort foods, but made better for you and gluten-free always. The best part? You don't have to sacrifice taste or time, so you can honor your cravings without compromising. Craving pizza? You can enjoy Cauliflower's delicious margarita pizza for only 370 calories for half the pizza. Looking for easy snacks that kids and adults alike will love? Cauliflower's baked, never-fried pizza snacks are nostalgia reimagined and ready in 5 minutes. Cauliflower's products are available in freezer aisles nationwide. Visit eatcauliflower.com/where-to-buy to find a store near you.
So the luminol revealed possible blood and stuff in the house?
Yes. Yes.
And there were some communications with is it Holly?
Yes, Holly is her friend.
Her friend Holly, she had some communications where apparently Susie, or someone claiming to be Susie, was communicating with her and said they had worked everything out, everything was okay. At the time, did Holly believe that it was really her, or what was the story behind that?
That was before they went missing. That was when Holly was leaving. When Holly was moving away, that's when Susie told her, "We're going to try to work things out, and we're going to try to work on it and fix it." At that time, Holly believes she probably said that because she didn't want her to worry about her when she left, because she knew that Susie would know that Holly would have a hard time leaving if she knew she was, struggling.
Yeah. And were there any clues from Susie's phone at all, as far as pings or anything that the police tried to work with to see if they could find any signs of her?
The phones were gone. I don't know if they were burned or what he did with them. I do know they went after phone records to look for pings, and there was no. And they were able to go back. There was no phone calls they could find where she had been talking to anybody else or anything. So, because Jerry was trying to say that she had left with another man, but she had no communications with another man on anything. So, where would this man have come from if she was always in the home, always there, and he monitored her phone calls, and there's nothing on nothing on her phones?
Yeah. So, Jerry's not talking to your family. You said he lawyered up. Has he cooperated at police at all, even through an attorney, or what is the level of cooperation there?
None. The first time he came in, talked to them, he wrote out a statement saying she had left with somebody else and this or that, and then instantly lawyered up, and he's hid behind the lawyer since, and he hasn't, as far as I know, he hasn't cooperated in any way.
And you mentioned, despite all the cleaning and him trying to revamp the house, the luminol picked up several blood spots. Were the police able to establish that blood belonged to Susie or Evan?
The chemicals that he used to clean up the blood deteriorated the DNA.
So they can tell it's blood, they just can't tell whose blood?
Yes.
Wow. Let me ask you this. So your family's come to believe that he had something to do with this. He acted strange. He was very possessive of her, he wanted to be involved in any conversations you had. So all of that makes sense that you would suspect him of doing this. But you also mentioned that she was aware of his background. I know there was some stuff online that maybe she was going to expose him and he was trying to keep the secret. What, in your mind, in your family's minds, what would be the motive for him to harm them?
I think he was afraid his secret was going to get out. I think she either told him she was going to leave him, and he didn't want her to leave because he found out she knew about the secret. I think, knowing her, she probably finally stood up to him and told him she knew that, and she threatened to expose him. And I think that's what probably set him off.
So he had really tried to keep this secret from everyone as much as he could. No one else really knew about it.
Yes. I think he was he wanted to portray the perfect family. And he wanted everybody around them to think he had this perfect situation, perfect family, and stuff like that. And that wouldn't have fit his perfect bill. And
another odd thing was Susie's dogs turned up at a shelter. Were they able to find out how they got there or who brought them there?
Jerry's father took them to the shelter and dropped them off. And he got the names wrong and told them that one of the dogs' names was Susie.
Oh, wow.
How do you get your daughter-in-law and your dog's name mixed up?
And to have the father drop them off seems like he might, even if it's secondary, be involved in some kind of role in the case.
I honestly think Mama and Daddy both are helping him to cover it up. I think they're involved and probably almost as guilty as him. Probably not in the act, but in the aftermath.
And they definitely have seized Jerry's computer. Do you know what, if anything, was found on that as far as evidence?
They have stated that there were searches on there that were very suspicious and didn't belong, but the police department will not tell us exactly what he searched.
Okay, so and again, it would be speculation, but it could have been how to hide a body, how to clean up a crime scene, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so I don't know if he was looking for abandoned places. I don't know if he was looking for how to clean. I don't know if he was looking for, how to hide or what. I'm not sure.
And speaking of places, has there been any speculation about where, that if I assume that they looked in the burn areas, the areas he was burning to see if there's any human remains there. But has there been any speculation about any other locations that he was familiar with or may have had access to where he could have hidden bodies?
We've had a few different things that we've thought, and we've had a private investigator that has came forward that has wanted to help us just because he heard the story and it touched him and not so much, and he's from the area. And so he's come forward and helped, and he's done a couple of different searches for us because it's easier for him to get into search sometimes than the police department. And so I know there was a quarry nearby that they searched. There was some water. I know that the sheriff's department did go out because they were so heavily involved in fishing. I know they did check a lot of the places of the water around where they fished and stuff. There were several different places. I know there was some property down the road from there that they had got a tip on that they had searched. And stuff. So I know there's a few different search places they've done. We've asked if we could put together a search before the private investigator come through, but the sheriff said there wasn't a place he could say, hey, yes, go to, for us to confidently go that would help at that time because they had hit most of the ones they could think of at that time. But we've had a few different things. There's a few other things I think the private investigator is still trying to check into on locations.
It's got to be a very frustrating feeling for your family to feel in your hearts that Susie and Evan were killed by this man, yet not have any kind of evidence to prove it or to result in an arrest, at least up to this point.
It's horrible to sit here. It's like a nightmare to know that he's still walking free. I guarantee he's cocky thinking he's gotten away with it, and he's still walking free, and we're sitting here with no answers. we have no closure. When their birthdays roll around or some event, there's not even a gravesite we can go to. There's nothing we can do to honor them. And it feels like, I don't know how many times I cry myself to sleep at night because I feel like they're thrown out like the trash. And they meant so much more than that to so many people. And for the first year, every time it rained, I cried all night because I felt like Evan was freezing in the rain. And I'd have to say to myself, I'm in Michigan, he's in Alabama. It's not even raining down there. Just go to bed, and stuff. And just the no closure is horrible. The no answers. My husband a few different times has got here and got so frustrated, and I've had to calm him down to keep him from getting in the truck and driving to Alabama to try to get some answers, because he's just like, I'm going to go search everywhere. I'm going to go do this. I'm like, we can't. It's middle of the night. We have to do what our hands are tied.
Yeah, and who could blame him for having that feeling of wanting to take matters into his own hands?
Yeah.
And I don't know if the police have told you this officially, but on paper, when you put all this stuff together, it seems like an overwhelming, clear-cut case of a murder cover-up. But what do you think it is that's officially keeping them from making an arrest?
Because they haven't found the bodies. The DA in Elmore County will not try a case, has never tried a case with no body. And so they...
Is that a challenge? Again, I'm not an attorney, but I assume that's more of a challenge than having a clear-cut case with a body.
Yeah, they said that if one juror said, oh, well, maybe she did just disappear, then that could cause the problem. And I understand. I don't want them to take the case to court and him to walk, because one juror said, yeah, she could be alive, and it hung up. And then he can walk down the street and tell everybody exactly where they are and what he did to them, and nobody can touch him. I don't want that to happen either. But I believe that's their biggest concern at this point, is to make sure that they don't have a juror that would say that.
And that, that's a great point, because of the double jeopardy. If it does get rushed to court and one person has doubt and he's found not guilty for some reason, he can't be tried again.
Yeah.
So I do understand that part of getting all their ducks in a row and making they have a airtight case against him. Hopefully their remains will be found, because maybe that will be what they need to actually push the case over the top and make an arrest. Are there more searches continued, more searches planned out or ahead?
I'm hoping so. I'm not sure right now. There's a couple that they were going to do before winter and stuff that was waiting for the right time of the year to do it. I do know that the sheriff's department is always hopeful when hunting season comes around, because there's so many hunters in the area that maybe they'll finally stumble upon them out in the woods or somewhere, because people will be tracking through places. But
yeah, just a very frustrating case to have so many clues and seemingly an overall picture, but be missing that one thing that helps make the case officially solved and an arrest made. But I do hope that you and your family do get answers, and that eventually you do get justice that you deserve.
I hope so too. I really do. It's, like I said, it's put a big spot in everything. You don't realize how much it affects everything you do and stuff. Like even me and my husband, we got married on Susie's 18th birthday. We can't even enjoy our anniversary anymore because we don't have answers to where she is. We can't. If she had passed from something differently, it would still be a reminder, but you could, it wouldn't be this horrible nightmare about it. And so you don't realize how much it overhangs over everything in your life when you're doing stuff. And We have a grandson now that looks just like Evan when Evan was little, and some days he just looks at me and does something, and he looks like him, and I just bust out crying, and he's looking at me like, "What's wrong?" And it's like, "Sorry, I just swear I saw Evan in my living room for a minute," you know.
Wow.
And
again, I hope your family finds those answers, even if it takes a long time. Hopefully it doesn't, but we see cases being solved all the time that are 20, 30 years old. And as you mentioned, you want the case to stick if there is an arrest made. So I hope that's what you do wind up getting eventually. And we'll do our best to help share the case on the show and on social media so people know that it's still unsolved.
Yes, I appreciate that greatly, because like I said, me and my husband watch crime shows now, real life ones, trying to figure it out. We've done so much research on everything in every way, and we're always studying shows. Like, wait, don't they tried this down there? And we'll call the detective. Did you try this? Did you think of this? And watch those different stuff like that all the time. And everything, like I keep telling my husband that I read, is we have to keep their story out there. We have to keep pushing it. If they're forgotten, then we lose all hope, and we can't. So we have to keep trying to get it back in the media in order to have hope. And with Jerry having military ties, because he is ex-military police and have military ties, we need it to get to these other states, because he might finally say the right thing to somebody in one of those states that didn't realize his wife and stepson were missing.
Yeah, plus keep the case out there, and because the right person who maybe saw something or heard something maybe just hasn't been aware that the case hasn't been solved, and you never know, the right person hearing about this might have some information. So we'll definitely do our best to put it out there for you.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Missing Persons. If you can provide any information to help solve the case we discussed in this episode, we hope that you'll contact the appropriate authorities.
We hope that you'll tell your friends about Missing Persons and invite them to listen to the show. Word of mouth will really help us grow. And if you'd like to help us reach new listeners, please be sure to rate and review Missing Persons on the platform you're listening to us now on.
We'd like to tell you a little bit about our Patreon program. If you visit patreon.com/missingpodcast, you can sign up to help this podcast through ongoing monthly support. As a thank you, we'll give you an on-air shout-out, a thank you card and sticker, plus you'll get ad-free early access to every new episode of Missing Persons, as well as any bonus content.
Your Patreon support also goes directly towards helping the missing, because every dollar that we earn through Patreon will be split with two worthwhile causes that benefit the efforts to bring missing people home: charlieproject.org and private investigations for the missing. Your Patreon support will really go a long way towards helping. We hope you'll consider supporting the show. Just a reminder, new episodes of Missing Persons drop every other Saturday. If you want to find us on social media, you can search Facebook for Missing Persons Podcast. We're also on Twitter with the handle @missing_pod. And of course, you can always find us on our website, missingpersonspodcast.net. On behalf of Jess Betancourt, this is Mike Morford, saying thanks, and we'll see you next time on Missing Persons.
Missing Persons is produced under the name AbJack Entertainment by Mike Morford and Jessica Betancourt. It's hosted by Mike Morford and Jessica Betancourt, with writing and research by Jessica Betancourt and editing by Mike Morford. Be sure to listen every other Saturday for an all-new episode of Missing Persons.